This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The Taliban set to reveal new Afghan government amid economic turmoil. Schools in northern Nigeria temporarily closed down due to threat of kidnapping. And Hurricane Idai unleashes flooding in New York and New Jersey. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. In business, OPEC and its allies agreed to gradually increase production as the demand for fuel continues to recover from the worst of the coronavirus pandemic. And in sports, Cristiano Ronaldo becomes the all-time leading scorer in men's international football. Welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with us for this hour. Let's start in Afghanistan, where the Taliban have called on anti-Taliban fighters in the holdout bastion of Panjshir Valley to lay down their arms as the resistance movement says it has repulsed heavy attacks. Clashes continue being reported in several parts of the country. The Kabul Emergency Surgical Center for War Victims has received 4 dead and 5 wounded following fighting in the Gulbahar area. Earlier, the Taliban surrounded Panjshir, called for negotiations for a peace settlement. A senior Taliban official says that has failed. The anti-Taliban forces have vowed to defend the enclave. Reports say over 30 Taliban fighters were killed. In the capital, Kabul, Taliban leaders say they are working on forming an inclusive government that will respect people's rights and freedoms within the Islamic law. The group is expected to name a supreme leader soon. All right, let's get you more on this. We are now joined by CGTN's Zamaria Abbasan from Kabul. Zamaria, thank you for joining us here in Africa Live. We appreciate your company. Now, the Taliban is prepping to announce a new government. Do we have any indication at this point of what the new government will look like? Zamaria?
Hello, Richard. This is a critical part of the new history of Afghanistan as Taliban take over Afghanistan. The tiny part, Panjshir Valley, is still left unsolved and clashes continue, while the formation of the new government is on its way. According to the Taliban official, the new government will be formed as soon as Friday or some believe Saturday. But they have finalized their formation and their agendas towards the new Islamic government. The Taliban Supreme Leader Mullah Hibatullah Khund held meetings with Taliban leadership and framework of their council, and it's to be said that they have already formed everything about the upcoming government, and it's set to be announced as early as Friday. While on the other hand, there are still questions about the government. Will it be inclusive according to the international society and the region, and also the political parties and figures in Afghanistan? But according to Sher Mohammad Abbas Tanegzi, a senior official of Taliban in Doha, said that it will be inclusive government. When we talk with the former President Hamid Karzai, High Council for National Reconciliation Chief Dr. Abdullah, and many more, it doesn't mean that we'll share power with them. So the Taliban see an inclusive government differently than the international society is seeking. We will have to wait till Friday and Saturday till the Taliban come with an announcement about their government. Up to this point, we see a lot of Taliban leaders like Sirajuddin Haqqani as Interior Minister, Mullah Yaqub, son of Mullah Omar, former Supreme Leader of Taliban, as Defense Minister, and Mullah Abdul Ghani, brother, will be Foreign Minister according to the Taliban sources, and they've already appointed to these positions. Yet, it's very less time, less than 24 hours, maybe, that the Taliban will have their formal announcement of the new government, while they still face a lot of challenges.
Well, we'll certainly be keeping an eye out on the updates on that new government. Let's talk about the security situation. We've been receiving reports of fighting in various parts of the country, Zamaralai. What is the security situation really like over there?
The security situation in capital Kabul is all controlled by the Taliban. The Kabul airport saga is already over after the taking over of Taliban. So there are several forces are inside the airport, but the airport, unfortunately, its assets and equipments were ruined and damaged by the U.S. and other forces affiliated with them recently since the collapse of Kabul and the evacuation process started. All around the country, it seems to be very calm, but Panjshir Valley. Taliban have intensified their attacks on Panjshir province from several parts, from Badakhshan, Kapisa, and Baghlan provinces, and there are reports of casualties according to Kabul Emergency Center for the War Victims. They have already reached 4 wounded and 4 other dead while they were on way, and they have lost their lives to hospital. These reports come in a way where there are still clashes between the Taliban and the resistant force, or the Panjshir anti-Taliban forces, in 2 different areas. The names are Kohe Band and also Gulbahar areas. There are clashes, and the resistance force claim that they have come up with casualties to the Taliban, and the Taliban haven't said anything formal, but yes, the reports about the clashes are confirmed and the war is continuing. While on the other hand, Afghanistan economic collapse is looming, but the most looming business is the coffin selling in Afghanistan at this moment. Richard.
Zamaralai Abbasan, thank you for that updated report. Excellent reporting. Thank you. Many thanks. Staying in Afghanistan, tens of thousands of Afghans are currently struggling to leave their country after the departure of foreign forces. Many refugees have fled to Europe or other Asian countries, and a few to Africa. However, Afghans are not the only refugees from Asia to have found domicile in Africa in recent years. Yasser Hakim looks at how refugees from Syria are finding life in Egypt.
Sheher Rajoub is spending some fun time with friends in Cairo after a hectic day at work. A former journalist, he had fled the war in Syria via a road and boat trip to Egypt with his mother and brother in 2013.
We chose Egypt because they like Syrians. There's a unity between the two peoples, and there's a similarity in the way of living. The Egyptians welcomed us, and we settled in quickly.
Sheher has made good use of his time in Egypt.
I used to work in media. Here, I've established an agency to film events, weddings, and advertisements. On the side, I'm a real estate agent. With my good relations with traders, I also provide job opportunities for about 20 or more Syrians a month so that they can have a source of income in order to live dignified lives.
According to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in April 2021, Egypt hosts about 6 million refugees. Syrians are over 500,000, but there are no refugee camps, as the North African country merges refugees within the community.
Some of them are living in a good standard of living, because I'm aware that some have their own apartment in 6th of October or in a Rahab. Some of them are suffering in a condition which is not excellent. They are receiving support from the international community, from IOM, and from the Egyptian Red Crescent. And of course, Egypt is facilitating the services provided to them coming from such entities.
The North African country allows refugees to own a home, set up a business, buy land, and can enroll children in schools like any Egyptian. Taysir Najjar, a refugee himself, has established a charity organization to assist Syrians in the relocation process. Taysir says one main challenge is applying for residency.
إذا كان عنده أبناء وأبنائه هم اللي عندهم أطفال مدارس.
The ones who have children enrolled in schools or own houses and big businesses are allowed residency, but others are not. The problem is we cannot travel to see our family members and they can't come to visit. It's a problem I face personally, as my wife and children are in Saudi Arabia. We are far apart. Egypt is still a good place to live, a good place to have as home, especially since the people accept us. They are welcoming and gracious.
And Shahir agrees, but although he's settled down and has a successful business and life, this is never enough.
My country and my home is Syria. My dream is to return to my country. This is the dream of every Syrian. We pray for God to bring peace to Syria so that we can go back home and that the war ends.
And he's living by, hoping one day his dream comes true. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's head to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 80 people have been reported missing after militia ambushed a convoy in the eastern part of the country. 4 people were killed and 16 vehicles burnt down during the attack, and the conflict hit Ituri province. The convoy was being escorted by the Congolese army and UN peacekeepers due to insecurity along the main highway linking Ituri with North Kivu province. The Allied Democratic Forces rebel group is suspected to have been behind the attack. The militant group has been accused of killing thousands of people in the region over the years. Authorities in Nigeria's northwestern state of Zamfara have shut down all schools in the region following a spate of mass student kidnappings. The move comes as at least 73 more children were abducted from a secondary school in Zamfara's remote village of Kaya. The students were taken by armed men riding motorbikes and pickup trucks. A member of staff was also kidnapped. Reports indicate that the number of kidnapped children could even be higher since the school has more than 400 learners. Most of the kidnapped students are girls. At least one student was critically injured when the gunmen opened fire during the incident. Security agencies have been grappling with kidnappings of school children in northern Nigeria. Let's bring in CGTN's Philly Haza live in Abuja. Phil, thank you for joining us here in Africa Live. There are reports that the number of kidnapped children could even be higher. Can you give us more details on the latest incident, Phil?
Well, thank you, Richard. Indeed, it's another very, very sad day here in Nigeria, hearing these news. In fact, the fears are that people don't get to the point where they become cold to this kind of development because over 70 students is quite a lot. Look at the families, the relatives of these children. How will they be coping at the moment? According to locals at the scene, the numbers actually could be higher, but official statements from the police command has pegged that number for now at 73. That's because according to some staff in the school, there were about 400 students and staff at the time of the attack because they were preparing for an exam, and they were just about to write the exam when they heard a number of motorcycles, barging into the school, and then afterwards gunshots. Many of the students had to flee the school into nearby bushes and outside of the school facility for safety. So proper head count is still ongoing to ascertain how many students have been taken away aside, or how many students are missing, not just the ones that the police say have been abducted. So all of that is still what we're monitoring, but for now the official statement from the police says that it is 73.
All right, 70 is a lot. The number could be higher. Not good news coming out of Nigeria. Now, Phil, Zamfara's government has ordered all schools to close to prevent further attacks. Do we know how long this closure will be, and what plans have been put in place for the children missing out on their studies, Phil?
Well, for now, Richard, I think the focus for the government and, of course, the ideal thing that everyone would expect is to, first of all, ensure that the students, the entire state and citizenry are safe and, you know, further attacks or reprisal attacks from these criminals will not occur. The government has, in that vein, imposed a curfew, dusk to dawn curfew in 14 local governments of the state. That's about almost the entire state, and also the government has also banned all schools. They've instructed all schools to close down, whether it's a day school or a boarding school. The reason is because they want to ensure that these criminals don't get into other schools that are preparing for exams and all of that. So for now, I think the focus will be that, not to even talk about the educational flow of these students. But then, of course, security analysts have been pressuring the government to be more proactive than reactive, because we've seen this happen times and times again, not just in Zamfara State, in other states, where it is until this attack occurs that these schools are shut down. And what security experts are saying, that why not shut down the schools first, put in the security measures before reopening them. So that's the state of things. But of course, the curfew and the schools being shut down will not be indefinite, it will not be forever. It will have to be after the schools, or rather the government, have put some kind of security measures in place. Currently, the police says that they are in pursuit of these criminals, where they have intelligence report of where they're heading to keep the students. And so until that is done, before we believe that the government might want to, you know, open the schools again and ensure that the students write their exams, maybe rework the calendar to see how that they can fit into the program of the students.
Philly Hauser, thanks for keeping a close eye on that story. Many thanks. Time now for a short break. You're watching Africa Live. Here's a look at what's ahead. Hurricane Nta unleashes flooding in New York and New Jersey. Zambian and Nigerian experts called for collective fight against COVID-19.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent, to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The island nation of Mauritius is home to some of the most pristine maritime ecosystems in the world. In July 2020, disaster struck when the Japanese carrier ship Wakashio ran aground on the reef a mile from the coast. Over the following 2 weeks, NGOs mobilized foreign aid, but then the ship broke in two, spilling an estimated 1,000 tons of fuel oil into the pristine lagoon.
Ça va prendre des années à revenir, donc parce que les dégâts là, pour nous, quand on regarde, quand on va en mer, c'est irréversible.
Join us as we navigate the far-reaching ramifications, environmental, personal, and political.
Welcome back to Africa Live. I'm Richard Nta. Thanks for staying with us. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has held a virtual meeting with U.S. climate envoy John Kerry, who is in the northern city of Xinjiang for climate talks. Now, both have agreed that climate cooperation between the two major economic powers is critical. But Wang says other issues hounding bilateral ties must be addressed as well. Wang Haiyang reports.
During the virtual meeting on September 1st, Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the U.S. Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry agreed that the two countries' cooperation on climate change serves interests of both sides and of the world. Wang Yi said China was sincere and willing to cooperate with the U.S. in dealing with global climate issues.
We have shown our sincerity. Everyone who met you will have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine, but we are willing to pay that price to discuss cooperation with the U.S. on affairs of mutual concern. As two major powers, cooperation is our only correct option and the sincere expectation of the international community.
The former U.S. Secretary of State expressed hope that the two sides could lead climate change efforts and fulfill their commitments to implementing the 2015 Paris Agreement.
Given the science and what's happening, that we're all going to be dealing with this, certainly for the rest of our lives. This challenge is as big as any that we face on a global basis. And China, my friend, plays a super critical role.
While cooperation on climate change enjoys broad support, worsening China-U.S. relations on other issues are complicating the path to mutually beneficial results. Foreign Minister Wang urged Washington to stop viewing China as a threat and a rival, and to take concrete actions to get bilateral ties back on track. Wang reiterated China's two lists of major concerns and three bottom lines he presented in July to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State. He said the U.S. timely response to these concerns and bottom lines are necessary for bilateral ties to resume. One of China's two lists demands Washington to retract punitive measures on Beijing, including the U.S. unreasonable sanctions on Chinese officials and government agencies. The other list calls on the U.S. to address individual cases such as violent attacks and unfair treatment of Chinese citizens in the United States. The three bottom lines the U.S. must respect are non-interference in China's socialist system, the right to development, and last but not least, its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The U.S. side likened China and the U.S. cooperation on climate change to a metaphorical oasis amid tension in bilateral ties. However, Wang Yi said this oasis can run dry and fail if it continues to be surrounded by the desert of irreconcilable differences on other issues. Kerry responded, saying cooperation on climate issues will create opportunities for addressing difficulties facing the two superpowers.
Remnants of Hurricane Nta have brought heavy downpours to New York City and New Jersey. New York City has issued a state of emergency for flash floods. Residents are told to stay away from roads and subways. New Jersey has also declared a state of emergency. One tornado and several floods have hit. Reports said flash flooding has led to the deaths of at least 8 people in New York and New Jersey. From widespread power outages to dangerous heat, Hurricane Nta's impact is being felt throughout southern Louisiana and Mississippi as people there continue to assess storm damage. The system now moving north, dumping heavy rainfall in its wake, where potentially life-threatening and flash flooding is expected.
It's horrible here right now, horrible.
No electricity, scorching heat, food, water, and gas in short supply.
These people are going to wait hours to get gas, probably 7-8 hours to get gas. It's not good.
Many of those left in Louisiana lining up for gas. Some who chose to ride out the storm now packing the highways to get out. Others trying to keep their generators going.
We're hoping that we can get gas in time before the food goes bad.
Crews struggling to restore power, but there's no end in sight. Officials say power could be out for weeks in Louisiana.
There's thousands of men and women out there in this heat working hard to get it back on. Nobody's happy with the progress thus far.
In places where Ida wreaked the most havoc, cleanup is underway amid damage to homes, roads, bridges, and businesses.
This is devastating. It's nothing left to the shopping center.
Mississippi's governor urging the state to remain on high alert, watching out for unsafe roads and bridges.
When you get 12 inches over a very short period of time, just with flooding and other avenues, it's really, really challenging.
And Ida's not done yet. Other states now feeling the impact, bracing for potentially life-threatening flash flooding.
Health authorities in South Africa's Western Cape province have launched a new vaccination program which coincides with the start of spring in the country. Authorities are urging people to get vaccinated before they go out to celebrate or attend social events. Renee Del Carme reports.
The Jabs for Joel campaign means get the jab before you go out socializing. Although it's aimed mostly at getting young people between 18 and 35 to get vaccinated, it's also part of a wider campaign to try and combat vaccine apathy affecting all age groups.
It's about knowing that now people will be more socializing as the country lockdown restrictions will be adjusted, of course.
This campaign is the hashtag Jab Before Joel, and that is a very Capetonian term, Joel, for partying. And it's basically to attract the youth and motivate them to be able to get their vaccine before they go and party.
Many residents here in Khayelitsha say COVID-19 has brought much economic hardship. They say they hope and pray that more people getting vaccinated will eventually lead to life in their community and the rest of South Africa getting back to normal.
I want to be normal. I want to go out. I want to have fun. I am still young. But since then, there is a corona, so we can't go out, we can't do anything.
I was working in hospitality, I've lost my job because of we don't live that normal life anymore now, So I feel much better now. I wish more of us to take vaccine.
Scientists here are also concerned about a new SARS-CoV-2 variant known as C.1.2, which was recently detected in South Africa and countries including Zimbabwe, Botswana, Mauritius, the UK and New Zealand.
The percentage of the variant within the Western Cape province is quite low. Right now we're looking at the data quite closely to be able to see how effective the variant is with the vaccines.
Experts say it's likely that the C.1.2 variant is highly transmissible, but they are still conducting key laboratory tests. Renee Del Carme, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Zambian and Nigerian experts have also called on the international community to fight COVID-19 collectively as opposed to stigmatization and trading blame.
It is pointless and not good and not wise for any country to start stigmatizing or demonizing any other country for this pandemic. This pandemic is with us and we are losing people. So what is needed is for us to work together as one and fight this deadly pandemic. If we continue, if we start pointing fingers at this country or the other country, we'll be divided, and as a result, the pandemic is going to harm us very bad.
If there are any countries in the world that are accusing China at this particular moment for the outbreak, I think they are missing the point, because what has happened is that this virus has become global, and if we get consumed by accusations and counter-accusations, we will miss the big picture, which is to save the many lives out there where the virus is spreading.
In Uganda, one hospital is saving the lives of premature babies by feeding them breast milk donated to its bank by well-wishers. The breast milk donations are increasing fast, despite the practice having not been embraced by many mothers in Uganda. The hospital says it has saved the lives of premature babies by at least 30% since it opened the breast milk bank a year ago. CGTN's Isabel Nakuria has more details.
Asha Mary delivered quadruplets at 25 weeks in May after developing complications with her pregnancy. She was also unable to breastfeed her preterm babies because she didn't have enough milk. Doctors at the hospital in Kampala recommended only breast milk. Asha had no choice but to look for a breast milk donor.
Since I don't have anyone who can give my babies, my sisters, they are not breastfeeding, and I don't have relative who is breastfeeding. That's why the doctor decided to help me and bring that donor.
Unfortunately, Asha lost 2 of her babies, but the remaining 2 are now back home and out of danger. The WHO says prematurity is the leading cause of death in children under 5 years globally. Asha's babies are now 3 months old, but she still doesn't have enough breast milk for them. She still depends on breast milk from a donor, and she's also supplementing with formula milk, which was recommended to her by her doctor. Breast milk donation is not very popular in Uganda because many mothers don't trust their babies feeding on milk from strangers. However, demand is picking up.
I know it is not easy, but I have faith in my heart, and I believe that that woman really, since he's breastfeeding his baby, I have faith that my babies will be healthy.
So far, only the International Hospital in Kampala is trying to promote breast milk donations, but only for preterm babies. Its nurses were the first donors before rolling it out to the public. Breast milk has been found safe and nutritious for babies because it reduces risks linked to formula milk.
We used to have babies undergoing surgeries because of the complexity of the formula milk. So breast milk research had been done on it and showed that breast milk is soft. It's the natural thing and it has everything. It has protective measures in it, the antibiotics. So the antibodies that were found in the breast milk could even protect the baby's immunity and then boost it more further so that the babies could fight infection naturally.
The hospital has now opened a breast milk bank to save preterm lives. So far, the hospital has started distributing breast milk to hospitals around Kampala, but their capacity is still low. It needs a pasteurizing machine to be able to have bigger and safe quantities of milk for babies, but this is a costly venture. Asha says her babies are growing well and have not developed any complications despite being fed on milk from a stranger. She's calling on mothers with excess breast milk to donate to babies in great need. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
The news continues on Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with our business segment. Here's a look at what's ahead. Coming up in business, China's International Fair for Trade and Services kicks off in Beijing.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. The China International Fair for Trade Services kicks off later today. Chinese President Xi Jinping will address the fair via video link, and participants from more than 150 countries and regions are expected to attend the global fair online or in person. Organizers hope to be on trend this year with all things going digital and green. Sun Ye joins us live from the National Convention Center in Beijing. Sun Ye, welcome to Africa Live. Can you give us more details on the trade fair? What will be its key focus, Sun Ye?
Right, hello, Richard. Just in a few hours, the CIFTIS Fair is kicking off later tonight, and as you said, Chinese President Xi Jinping will be speaking via video link tonight, and that's a widely watched speech. And as you said before, this year this is an expanding fair. Participants coming from more than 150 countries and regions are taking part. And as you said, also the key word is green and digital. Now, there are 130,000 square meter of showcase space on the ground, straddling 2 different convention centers in Beijing, and 4,400 companies are taking part online or in their digital self. And perhaps nowhere else better shows Beijing's drive and determination to go green than one of those convention centers. That's the Shougang Park. It was a defunct steel factory and turned into a green, low-carbon convention center. And this place will also feature big in the coming Winter Olympic Games. And the CIFTAS Fair this year, one of the biggest highlights is that we are going to see all things and services about the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games. This is perhaps the chance that will give us the best yet look into how that game will go into place, which is going to happen in less than 6 months' time. And if last year's fair is of any indication, hosting such a global event in the economic climate shows Beijing's resolution to stay open. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping said in his speech last year at last year's opening ceremony that China will further open up and work more with the rest of the world for shared prosperity. And since then, China's Commerce Ministry has unveiled a range of measures to speed up and further open up. That's including a ever-shortening negative list of cross-border services in trade. And China has also established pilot zones, especially to facilitate that process. So it's widely expected in tonight's speech, what President Xi Jinping said will again speak volumes about where China is going and perhaps where the rest of the world is going. Richard?
Sonia, many thanks. Thank you for speaking with us. In other news, China has continued to play a major role in financing and supplying telecom and ICT equipment to Africa. Chinese companies like Huawei have helped to bring down charges and contributed to the success of mobile phones on the continent. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
Chinese telecom companies have in the past decade become key players in Africa's digital economy. Now, some of the telecom firms are now integrated in Africa's public and private sectors. The companies are providing digital infrastructure for projects like data centers, e-governance, telecom infrastructure, and undersea internet cables. Huawei's hardware equipment reportedly constitutes 70% of the 4G infrastructure in Africa. The company is also the first to offer 5G services in Africa. The Peace submarine cable, in which Huawei is a major player, is expected to offer the shortest submarine fiber cable route from China to Africa, with its landing zones in Djibouti and Kenya. Now, besides Huawei, Transsion Holdings Group reportedly controls 40% of the smartphone market in Africa. In 2020, its smartphone market share in the continent exceeded 40% and ranked number 1 by the end of the second quarter. Now, its brands include Tecno, Itel, and Infinix. Now, China's tech companies have also developed apps like Boomplay and Viskit that dominates Africa's social media landscape. In the mobile money segment, apps like PalmPay and OPay are backed by Chinese investors to make inroads into the fintech sector. Now, South Africa's Vodacom Group, in partnership with Alibaba, launched VodaPay, a super app that integrates mobile payment with e-commerce, business, and lifestyle services. Now, Chinese tech companies are also supplying various authorities with diverse digital infrastructure and services. Now, tech companies like Huawei and ZTE have secured government contracts to construct smart cities, data centers, and artificial intelligence and technology systems.
Oil prices fell on Thursday after OPEC and its allies agreed to keep the policy of gradually increasing supply to the market. The decision comes as world economies and demand for fuel continue to recover from the worst of the coronavirus pandemic. Starting on the 1st of October, the group will add 400,000 barrels per day to the market. Some oil experts are concerned, however, that this decision may lead to an oversupply of oil in 2022. Egypt is banking on a digital transformation to drive economic growth after the coronavirus-induced slowdown. Authorities in the North African country have launched a digital Egypt plan that seeks to diversify its economy by adopting technology to spur innovation. CGTN's Yasser Hakim reports.
Egypt's digital transformation drive began officially in 2017, but has picked up steam after the onset of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. The government is gradually digitizing most services in the North African country, be they public or private.
There's a clear strategy to build a digital community and an online state website that provides 70 services so far. The strategy also includes a legal aspect with regulations already rectified by Parliament to organize this sector, such as the Electronic Activities Law. It also includes building a developed infrastructure to elevate from 4G to 5G internet service. An important element is the National Council for the Cybersecurity that was established 4 years ago to ensure the safety of all online transactions and activities.
Paying all types of bills, issuing car licenses, building permits, certificates and more are now being handled online. This drive has opened the door for tech companies and startups in the e-sector to flourish in the market.
The e-economy accounts for about 5% of Egypt's GDP, which is not a small amount. Egypt leads Africa and in the Middle East in outsourcing services and is 10th in the world. Egypt's e-exports has increased from $5 billion to $6 billion, which is a considerable increase, while startups in the e-sector are also on the rise, with many of them going global. The financial sector has been the leader in this transformation in Egypt and many other countries because the fast transfer of money is a crucial aspect in modern societies and businesses worldwide. To guarantee the fast and safe transfer of capital, investments and payments, it requires a strong infrastructure and developed banking systems to keep up with this fast-growing market.
The ease of online banking has also attracted more Egyptians to open bank accounts. This has accelerated the target set by the government, which is achieving financial inclusion for most of the Egyptian population. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Tunisia has announced it will receive $776 million as the allocation of special drawing rights from the International Monetary Fund. The allocation by the Washington-based lender will help ease an acute economic crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Adnan Shwashi reports.
Just a week after the IMF announced the largest allocation of special drawing rights in history of $650 billion, authorities in Tunisia said they will receive $775.8 million as the SDR allocation comes into effect. Economists explain that the SDR allocation will provide additional liquidity to the global economic system.
Tunisia's share is $775.8 million, according to the country's contribution to the special drawing rights. This is not a loan from the IMF. The sum will provide a foreign exchange reserve for Tunisia and increase the state's reserves in foreign currency globally. It contributes to improving the financial situation in the world in both a direct and indirect way.
The president of the Circle of Tunisian Financiers says the North African state can use the amount provided by the Bretton Woods Institute to support its economy and step up the fight against the prevailing economic, social and health crisis.
If Tunisia uses its SDR right, supplements its foreign currency reserve and uses it to finance state funds, it will not have to pay back the money to the IMF. It's therefore an available liquidity for Tunisia to finance the budget deficit and other expenses. However, the amount must be used in the right manner because this opportunity comes rarely.
According to the National Institute of Statistics, economic growth in Tunisia is currently volatile amid the pandemic fallout. The national economy shrank 0.2% in the second quarter of 2021. Analysts say the IMF allocation will support the country's economy that has been battered by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The IMF allocation is a significant push for Tunisia, which is still battling the pandemic and its disastrous economic and social consequences. The IMF president noted that SDRs are a precious resource which need to be deployed for the maximum benefit of member countries and the global economy.
The IMF managing director declared that SDRs are being distributed to countries in proportion to their quota shares in the International Monetary Fund. This means about $275 billion is going to emerging and developing countries. Economists say the special drawing rights allocation would provide additional liquidity to the global economic system, supplementing the foreign exchange reserves of countries including Tunisia and reducing their reliance on more expensive domestic or external debt. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Don't go away, a lot more news coming your way on Africa Live. Here's a peek at the headlines. Tourism at the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania blossoms amidst coronavirus pandemic.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. We appreciate your company. Tanzania's Serengeti National Park has started to see the return of tourists from all over the world as countries push on with their vaccine rollouts. Thousands have come to the park to witness one of the world's most iconic sites, the Great Wildebeest Migration, as well as the Big Five of the African savanna. Officially established in the early 1950s, the Serengeti is one of Africa's oldest national parks and one of the most famous in the world. CGTN's Daniel Kijo visits the Great Park and brings us this story.
The Serengeti National Park is not only a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it is also one of the most famous wildlife sanctuaries in the world. Of all of Tanzania's 22+ national parks, the Serengeti is the crown jewel, generating almost half of the total revenue for the Tanzania National Parks Authority. Juliet Sumari has been a guide at the park for over 4 years. After a year of disruptions due to COVID-19 travel restrictions, she says she's glad crowds have picked up this summer, as vaccinated tourists from all over the world come to witness one of the most spectacular sights in the natural world.
We thank God the situation now is not like it was last year. Now we have guests, as you can see. Every couple of days you receive tourists. Little by little, over time, we can get a lot. So I'm thankful to God.
The park is the ultimate destination to spot lions, rhinos, elephants, leopards and buffaloes, commonly known as Africa's Big Five. The Serengeti Park was named Africa's leading park in 2019 and 2020 by the World Travel Awards. Tourists who came to the park say they are not disappointed.
Every day we have had something that we thought could not possibly be topped, and the next day is even more spectacular. So we've been able to see all the animals in the Big Five, so much more variety and wildlife than I thought we would encounter. In practice, it's been absolutely incredible.
You hear it before you see it. One of the Serengeti's most sought-out sights, the thundering hooves on the Great Plains, as a great migration gets underway. Over 1.5 million wildebeests in perpetual motion. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, each year over 450,000 tourists from all over the world come to the Serengeti to witness this. Thousands of wildebeest crossing River Mara into the Masai Mara Reserve. The Serengeti continues to lure the world's top celebrities, musicians, actors, and sports personalities. It has been the site of many Hollywood productions and the inspiration behind Disney's The Lion King. But visitors say seeing it in the flesh is much more fulfilling.
To see this reality.
I have seen this from a lot of virtual reality, some documentary, television and publicity. But to be here to see this with my own eyes is amazing.
The Serengeti showcases the beauty of the world's circle of life. And after a difficult year, those here hope growing visitor numbers will breathe fresh life into the country's tourism sector. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Serengeti, Tanzania.
Don't go away. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a look at the headlines.